G'day, Geo from Aurora Solutions, here to speak about contrast and judgment and what part they played in my evolution and the experiences that I had through the pit story that we heard earlier. So I'm going to dive straight into this, and I'm going to go straight into the moment where we had this or experienced this event here when I was 8 years of age. And this is when I had realised that my relationship with my father had changed. Yeah? So at this point in time, what happened was that I decided something about myself. And if you remember back to the story, I made three sort of distinctions. One, that I was unlovable, I wasn't valuable, and I was a coward because I couldn't defend myself. So I made a decision here about that situation, but mostly what I'd done is relate that to me. I'd made those decisions about me. Now, if I look back on that now, that situation had nothing to do with me other than the fact that I was a part of it. But I made those decisions to mean something about me. So therefore I've made a judgment as such. And so decisions are a judgment. As soon as I decide something is one way or another, I've had to have judged it. By the way, it was a choice. And so I'm going to refer to these as choices. Because once I start to take ownership of this over here, I start to take responsibility down over there with my mentor, I start to see that I've actually done this by choice. Now, I'm not conscious of that choice here. I just want to make that clear. As an 8-year-old, I've done this as a protective mechanism. I make it about myself, and then I go forward into life. Now, what occurred was, at the 8-year-old, I then started to, generate or look for validation that those decisions were right. And over the course of time, I get to myself when I was the 11-year-old self over here, and I take my shirt off in the swimming shed, and I hear the gasp. And then what I did was made a new choice, or added that choice to it. One, I still believe all of those three things before: not lovable, not valuable, coward. But I also now sit down and go, oh, actually this is wrong. Placing me into a position where I'm a victim to what's going on for me. Again, a choice. It's a logical choice. No one would argue that it wasn't, but at the time, that was the choice I made. Fast forward over here to 15 years of age, and I stand up to my father. I see fear in his eyes, and at this point, I make a new choice. Oh, that's what power is. Which then I then go out and act into the world and become a drunk, and I get into fights, and I'm looking to eradicate the cowardice in my life, right? And some would say that's the exact opposite of what I did, but that was what I felt I was doing at that point in time, given the knowledge I had. I went out and fought and drank and fought and drank, and off I went into the world. And I get to about age 23 where I'm feeling pretty ordinary about myself. Notice that all of these things are really about my feelings. I'm feeling very ordinary about myself, and I make a new choice. Get myself off the drink, don't go on my holiday, I clean myself up, go and do a diploma of construction management, and then I meet my soon-to-be wife. Now, if you see all of this period from here to here, I've written it in red because these were very, very difficult years, and one would categorise them as probably a bad experience, and this is where contrast comes into. So the decisions that I've made, the choices that I've made, and the judgment that I would say I was holding at this time overall is that this is a bad experience. From 23 years of age and going forward, this starts to turn the corner, and I start to have a better experience of life. I start to clean myself up, my career starts to kick off, I start running job sites. At 24 years of age, I'm running men that are my age now. I've been placed into leadership roles right the way through until the present day. And so from a very young age, I'm now running crews, running men, running big, large jobs, and away we go. So my career's starting to kick off. I've found love. I've got a woman that actually sees good in me, and I hook on to that externally because I still, at this point in time, can't see much of that for myself. But if she loves me, then there must be something lovable in there, and we start to go. And we grow a family. The kids turn up, I become a family man, and my whole identity revolves around my children and my wife and my job. They're really the three pillars of my life at that point in time. The job was there, and you know, when we went to start a business, was there to feed the family, put them through the best lives that I could create, because that was my role in life. My marriage was a focus, staying connected, and my kids were a massive focus. And so life is going pretty good. And we create and, you know, start to grow this loving experience. But this was all based on external validation. My children were giving me love and I was providing love for them, but I didn't feel any for me. My wife was providing me love, but I wasn't finding any for me. And I went out at this point in time, and I went out and did my rugby coaching and my Kokoda programs. And at this point in time, what I had was all of these are moments of awakenings, different awakenings at different times. And the Kokoda track was a really distinct awakening. I understood, not mentally, but I understood through how I was feeling at this point in time, because my marriage at this stage here on my second Kokoda track was really starting to fall apart. And again, through no fault of anybody other than the fact that what I take responsibility for 100% was that I couldn't love myself, so I couldn't endure any difficulties in my relationship, and I certainly couldn't endure anything where I could feel my wife, you know, maybe retracting her love from me. So once that was starting to disappear, then there was nothing but a hole left. At this in between here, I'd started my leadership coaching, you know, as a profession. So I was still running my construction business at that point, but I'd started to contract to an organisation, and I was looking to impart what I'd learnt, particularly in business, to other business owners in the construction fields. And I was very good at it, good to relate, because I had lots of stories. They could see that I'd been through a lot of the stuff that they were going through, and so people related to me very, very quickly. But then another choice had occurred, and I chose to end my marriage. And so the breakdown occurred. And I separated from my wife and moved out of the home. Again, this now starts to bring into some really difficult times, and back to what I would call a bad experience. And at this time, again, it was a choice, but I started to undertake these panic attacks. Now, the one awakening and one thing that I'll say about the panic attacks is that at one stage I was prescribed some drugs to help me with those, and not that I've got any problems with drugs with treating anything like this and mental health illnesses and stuff like that. But for me, what I had become really aware to was that I had been running from the things that were causing these panic attacks all my life. You can see it right the way through here. And I felt that I needed to sit in it, and despite how excruciatingly painful it was, experience it for what it was, and have faith that I was going to get some lessons from it. And that's exactly what happened. My mentor turned up in the middle of it, and she had this conversation with me in and around taking 100% responsibility for the whole of everything. Back here, all of this, because I'd chosen it all. And as a consequence of that, I start to take responsibility, and I start to have an internal focus rather than external. My whole life here, all external. Everything was external. It was all about doing good for others, because that would make me better. It would make me less broken. Around here, I started to see the good in it all. I started to retrace all of these moments through here and start to see the good in the good moments, but also in the marriage breakdown, in these decisions that I'd made here. I understood that this then led me to understand that it was all part of a plan, because if I hadn't experienced some of this stuff, I wouldn't be able to relate the stuff that I'm currently doing now in my coaching, which is around here with the vulnerability and starting to share this to the world. This leads me to a point here where I'm totally grateful. Gratitude is taken, and I'm thankful for these moments at 8 years of age. Now, for some hearing this, that might be a real stretch, but I genuinely am. I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing right now if I wasn't grateful for what had happened, because without it, I believe it was part of my plan, my path, so that I could, using my analytical mind as well as my emotional side, being in touch with both, be able to decide, well, what were the emotions at this point in time, or what caused it, what created it, how did it work out the mechanics. Thus, this model. Now, what has happened in here is, of course, is that there's dividing line, and this is contrast. And you can see that in the different shades of the experiences here. And without the contrast, I would never be in a position where I would see this as a much better experience. Without that contrast, I wouldn't be able to have seen that. Because if I didn't know good, how could I possibly know bad? If I don't know day, how could I possibly know night? Everything in our human life is around contrast. It's how we learn. Now, by the way, everything in our human life without awareness, and this plays a massive part in this, without awareness is around judgment. We judge it, therefore it makes it so. We make a decision. This is a good experience. Excellent, that's a good experience. And because we've decided it is so. When we decide it's a bad experience, or it's wrong, or I'm powerful, or whatever it happens to be, that's what I go, and then I go and act. I think something, I feel something, then I go and do something. Thoughts, emotions, actions. This is how the mechanics of this work. So without the judgments, I can't learn either. The beautiful thing is with awareness, once I get to awareness, I'm now able to stop judging in the moment, ask a different question or a statement. This is very interesting. I wonder what I need to learn about myself here. Is the only statement or question that I ask myself now when any event turns up, particularly when I'm most aware. If I find something that's painful, I go, well, this is very interesting. I wonder what I need to learn about myself here. If something is joyful, I go, this is really interesting. I wonder what I need to learn about myself here. Because this is an internal focused paradigm. Leadership is about understanding how to lead yourself, and from there, others will follow. They will join on to the bandwagon because they'll feel it. They don't know what it is that you've got, but they want some of it. And by modelling it, by being an example of it, that's how we promote it. So I hope you get a good understanding of what contrast and judgment and the parts that they play in our evolution as a leader. I highly integrate this into our programs, and I utilise these models, but also through experiential processes that we have in our programs, get you to the seat of some of the decisions that you've made about yourself, so that you can make a distinction as to whether you've chosen them to be a good experience or a bad experience, and for the purpose of reshaping them into a different experience for the learning. That's when the learning occurs. My name's Gio Silinesu. It's a privilege and an honour to be in front of you and discussing this. I genuinely hope that you join me on the next video, where we can discuss some other topics and other mechanisms in which we can get to a greater level of leadership. Click on www.aurore, AURORE, solutions